All right, I'm here to go ahead and walk us through 8.3, the deep ocean. We've been talking about different marine ecosystems, and this is a pretty interesting one. One that we continue to discover more and more about because it is relatively unexplored and difficult to explore. Keep in mind you should be following along on your study guide, writing the stuff that is in bold. Hit pause and play as many times as you need to get down all of today's information. So the first thing that we're looking at, it says divisions. So we're just going to go ahead and capture this information here. This is something we mentioned before in a previous unit. Mesopelagic, bathypelagic, abyssopelagic, and hadopelagic, getting deeper and deeper as we go. Please note this is the deep ocean. This does not include the epipelagic, which is basically a surface layer up above this. We are specifically talking about the deep ocean here in 8.3. So these are all of the layers of the deep ocean down below the surface layer of the epipelagic. So a good way, we do want you to remember the order that these are in. A good way to maybe do that is with a mnemonic device. The one that we have here is My Big Arabian Horses to help you remember MBAH. You are welcome to try to come up with your own in class. We'll be doing a turn and talk to try to come up with a different one, see if we can do something better than My Big Arabian Horses. But if that works for you, that's fine. Just remember the MBAH in order to get the order right if that shows up on your test. All right, moving on. Life in the mesopelagic, we'll start there and work our way down. Life is reduced there than it is compared to the epipelagic. A lot more life towards the top of the ocean, probably for obvious reasons. That light allows for more primary production, which is going to allow for more life. No photosynthesis is going to mean not much life happening there. So the mesopelagic lies just below the well-lit epipelagic. The mesopelagic does have a little bit of light, very, very little. And one of the big things that we want you to know for the mesopelagic is from that zone, which is very dark and not well lit, at night, we have a huge number of species that will migrate vertically upward into the epipelagic in order to feed. It's the largest migration on Earth, and it's a vertical migration from the mesopelagic to the epipelagic. These migrators need to tolerate a rapid temperature change. The mesopelagic is where our main thermocline is, which is a rapid temperature change. That's as you get deeper and you don't have that sunlight warming it, it very quickly gets colder and colder. So these animals that are migrating from one zone to the other need to be able to tolerate that temperature change. It's a very special adaptation. Within this zone, you're going to have zooplankton, things like krill. You may also have some crustaceans like shrimp and maybe some isopods. Most mesopelagic fish are small, but a few of them do get a little bit larger. A couple of examples here. If you want to take a minute and study this, you won't be expected to have to identify any of these. We just wanted you to see what some of them look like. One of the adaptations here, there is a little bit of light, and so in order to be able to see, that large eyes are required, sometimes tubular, but large eyes are pretty common, as well as very long, sharp teeth. We're going to skip the oxygen minimum zone. All right, and now we move to the other three zones. So there's a little bit of light in the mesopelagic. There is no longer light now that we get to the bathypelagic, abyssopelagic, and hadopelagic. In these three zones, it is dark, cold, the salinity stays about the same, and then one of the key points here is that it is under very, very high pressure. All the weight of that water coming down on it, the creatures that live there have to be very specially adapted to that high pressure in this zone. So cold temperatures, no light, very high pressure. Not a pleasant place to be for an organism like us. In fact, we would not survive for a number of reasons. We do have in this zone, even though light from the sun does not make it, we do have a little bit of light that shows up throughout this zone in the form of bioluminescence. Bio meaning life, luminescence meaning light, so the living light, which is the idea, it comes through bacteria, it's a symbiotic relationship with the organism that with usually a fish. There could be some other organisms too, actually a number of them. But the organism will have this bacteria on it. The bacteria provides a little bit of light. It is thought that this bioluminescence might help towards courtship. They could be used in attracting prey. If they have eyes, typically creatures in these three zones have very small eyes, although some of them don't even have eyes, the eyes are absent. And really the only thing those eyes would be used to detect would be bioluminescence. So it's usually in those creatures that have some bioluminescence. And they use that in order to find mates. In the deep ocean, we're going to typically have no swim bladder like we do up in the epipelagic. We're going to have kind of flabby muscles, light, weak skeletons. These are mostly not creatures that are adapted for chasing and being chased. There's not much need because you can't even see each other. A very different type of predation that happens here. And then often a large mouth with those long pointed teeth. Got an example here, small eyes, large mouth. Some bioluminescence happening up here. Another just image of what some of these might look like. All right, so a little bit more information about deep ocean fish. Some are hermaphrodites, meaning that they can play the role of either male or female. They use chemical cues and pheromones to help attract the opposite sex or just to attract someone, and then they determine which role each one is going to play. They could play the role of either male or female in that situation. We do have in the deep zone some male parasitism, where the male will cling to the female. An anglerfish is an example. He's much smaller than the female, and so he'll kind of cling to her and rely on her for food. And then she relies on him, I guess, simply in the terms of egg fertilization. All right, deep sea benthos. These are going to be, remember, our benthos are our creatures that live on the bottom, and these are going to largely feed on marine snow. If we haven't mentioned that term before, marine snow is the dead matter that falls from the top to the bottom of the ocean from the layers up above it. A shark or a barracuda or whatever it may be, eating another organism, the pieces fall off, and maybe somebody else takes a bite along the way and pieces fall off, and eventually what you're typically left with are pretty small pieces that float to the bottom, and our bottom dwelling creatures in the deep sea tend to live off of that marine snow. Including some fish that live at the bottom. Our benthos here in the deep sea are not just crustaceans. We do have some fish that stay along the bottom and feed off of that marine snow. And then many of them tend to be larger than their counterparts. Many of our benthos do, like that copepod there. Still on deep sea benthos here. Bacteria live in huge numbers in the deep sea. We want you to be aware of that bacteria presence, and they play a pretty important role to, as well as viruses, may play an important role in the deep sea. Really some roles that we're only beginning to understand. Our ability to study this stuff is limited by our ability to get there and take samples. It's very difficult to know much about what's going on there, and we're still learning a lot about these different bacteria and viruses that are on the deep sea. We know that they're there in large numbers. What role they play is still being figured out. Then we get to hydrothermal vents. This is a topic that we have briefly discussed already previously in the year, but we mentioned it again. A hydrothermal vent is a place where chemical-laden water, hot water, is escaping from cracks in the sea floor, particularly around mid-ocean ridges. Right? These are places where there's a lot of volcanic activity, where seafloor spreading is taking place, and so there's a lot of heat rising up from the mantle. And then there are some, let's see here. There are some bacteria that that can feed on that heat, and that kind of similar to photosynthesis, but instead they perform chemosynthesis, where like a plant taking that heat from the sun and turns it into energy. There are some bacteria that can take these heat and chemicals from a hydrothermal vent and turn it into energy. And then from there, other things come and eat that bacteria, and a whole ecosystem is developed around these hydrothermal vents. So vents support bacteria that are the base of that food chain, and then from there you have some fish, shrimp, clams, crabs, snails, barnacles, sponges, lots of other different organisms that develop in that food chain around these hydrothermal vents. That is it for 8.3. I kind of flew through that a little bit, so if you have any questions, please message me and let me know if there's anything that was not clear. Hopefully you have everything that you need for 8.3 for the sake of your test. Hope you have a great rest of the week. Peace.